I'd like to introduce a bit of his background as well, so that if you have any questions, you know a bit more the person. He will be talking about TV scenarios for a convergent world, and mainly he's one of the main European experts in television strategy and regulatory consulting in Europe, I would say worldwide. He's a partner of Analysys Mason, is a consulting company, and he has 20 years experience of worldwide experience in media and telecom industries. He has a master's degree in spatial aeronautical telecommunications systems from Telecom Paris, a master's in telecommunication engineering, Università Politecnica de Catalunya, forgive my Spanish, and an MBA from INSEAD. His areas of interest and work, of course, are broadband, traditional, new digital media, such as PSB, DTT, DTH, cable, IPTV, internet-based TV, and maybe something else new I personally don't know about yet. He has led the strategy and regulatory consulting projects across the media and telecoms value chain across Europe. So I leave the word to him.
Thank you for the kind words in the introduction. Thanks also to CIRCOM to have the opportunity to be here with you today to share my experience, my views on what I have been asked to present here, which is a bit the future of the convergent world for television. What does this mean? How can we talk about these dynamic changes that we are all experiencing, and what is the structure of the drivers that will shape the industry going forward? How have we get there, and what will determine the future of the industry, and in particular to you that are the key players and that know much more than I in each of the TV channels and the countries that you work on. But I can hopefully through the presentation today provide and share my experience to facilitate the understanding of the changes, to structure the debate, to provide some facts, some evidence, to help understanding the scale and the pace of the changes, which is most important to inform the decisions that you have to take, short-term, tactically, but also long-term, to see what's coming in the next 5 or 10 years. So that's my objective today. I hope I can make it through the slides. I have plenty of slides. I think the most important thing for me is to share my experience but make it relevant to you. And the problem I have is, as you know, I was in Germany at the beginning of the week, in Leipzig. There was some workshop or journey as well of 2 days talking about regional and local TV in Europe, hosted by the Saxon media regulator. And we know that regional and local TV in Europe is very heterogeneous or diverse. How can we talk about that at pan-European level? There's more than 3,500 TV channels, regional and local TV channels in Europe, but some of them, like the German third channel, Lander channels, the regional PSB in Spain, address millions of households, 20 million of households, the larger ones in Germany. They have budgets of several hundred million euros. How can that be compared to other regional and local TV channels in smaller countries, which have a few 100,000, maybe, population, and running budgets of a few million, if they reach some millions? The challenges in the day-to-day life are very different, but nevertheless, we just try to put some framework to understand how the market is changing, and then it's up to you individually in relation to the dimension, the scale, the positioning of your TV channel, of your public service broadcaster in your regions, at the scale that they have, with the manpower that you have, the headcounts, and the means that you have, how you adapt to the changes, short-term and long-term, for politicians and regulators to understand those changes. So I would like to go with this introduction into my presentation and use the slides, if I could get them on the screen, to facilitate what I wanted to say today here, facilitate the discussion with you through some questions and answers, I don't know, through the presentation or towards the end, if we can manage the time adequately. The other thing I think is important, it was on the earlier session before, who is watching us, it was about measuring audiences and understanding the audiences. What I have here today, obviously, I use in my day-to-day life as many data that we have to provide evidence to inform the changes in the industry and to make it as accurate as possible. But we know that all the data has limitations. The audience measures that we give as reliable are based on samples of monitoring the consumption of linear TV and increasingly non-linear TV. But they are based on samples. And just as an anecdote, just to put in context the numbers, which I think I want to use the numbers for the evolution of the market rather than the absolute number in a given indicator. So when we look in the past, I look in the past at the difference on the viewing share of regional and local TV in Catalonia using the Spanish metering system. The problem is the metering system was designed for national relevance and national television relevance, not for the regional and local one. When they increased the number of meters for just the Catalonia region or the local region in which they wanted to measure, there was about a gap of 10% points. They were underestimated, the audience of the regional and local TV channels in that region. I'm sure that's familiar to you all. So just put in some context, that the indicators that we have are the best we have to measure our industry. But by no means that means that they are accurate 100%, and we need to play with uncertainty with these numbers. Nevertheless, I think they are very interesting. And they're lessons, they're insights, and those are the ones I want to share with you. Take the dynamic view of the market to inform our perspectives. A bit long, but I thought it was worth explaining the difficulties of talking about linear TV, non-linear TV, and how that affects all of you, how it will shape the industry going forward. Let me see. So what I have prepared for today, is talk about, first of all, a brief, or not that brief, introduction or setting the scene. What I mean by that is, in many cases, the difficulty is to make sure that we are talking about the same thing. Linear TV, non-linear TV, connected TV. Is that connected TV, linear TV, non-linear TV? Is that about web TV? Is that TV on the internet, on the mobile, on the tablet? Are we measuring it all? I'm not sure. And it means different things in France, in Germany, in the UK, when we talk about connected TV or web TV. And therefore, there are uncertainties about the measures. There's uncertainties about the terminology. So we have just to deal with that, okay? But when we talk, we just need to understand, and when we talk about that across Europe, we need to understand the differences. The same I said about regional local TV, it may be about connected TV. So we just need to be flexible on our understanding, and when we compare things, that we put them in perspective. Second is the European broadcasting model. Just as I will go rapidly, just to understand the ecosystem. It's less important today. It's important to understand the role of public service broadcasters and regional public service broadcasters therein. But I think it's just because at the end of the day, when we see the evolution of linear and non-linear TV is highly regulated, non-linear TV is not regulated, or not that much, and therefore there's high or very important discussions and debate going forward that is taking place at the moment, and in particular in Germany, in France, in the UK, with position papers, a white paper in the UK, and also a couple of weeks ago with a European Commission green paper to highlight what's going to be the important things to look at when we look at the next 5 years or 10 years. The bulk of my presentation, the bulk of what I wanted to share with you today is the medium section, the evolution so far, just to understand the drivers of change and to try to understand what will determine the ecosystem in which we will have to play, compete, and take our decisions over the next 5 or 10 years. What will make the market to be like a scenario A or scenario B, and what are your decisions to best cope with one or the other scenarios, and how can you react to that? So I then move to just, if I can move, I don't know where I have to look at with my pointer. Here it is, sorry. So first of all, what I was saying is what we mean by linear or non-linear TV. We don't understand the difference between one or the other. Some just themes or some elements that I will use through the presentation to understand the change on linear TV and the changes on non-linear TV. First is the scheduling. This is a linear TV understood as a programming, 24 hours. In given hours, you have different types of programming, news, documentaries, films, sports, or whatever. Non-linear programming is on demand. We're not thinking about the same thing anymore, and the transitions between. The devices. I think one of the key things of understanding is the industry has been understood by broadcasters or television and the television set as a whole thing. This definition is just breaking apart. I think that televisions is a different, or broadcasters is one important definition, and the key players in the ecosystem. The television set, I'm not sure what is the future for television set. It's just shaping different multiple forms, displays, connectivity that will change completely the game. Consumption, obviously laid back or not, more proactive. This is also changing, and all the interactions that you all know. The transmission, the different traditional linear TV transmission networks, DTT, cable, satellite, increasingly IPTV, but then more and more broadband internet-based. The type of services, standard definition, high definition, ultra high definition, more professional. Across the whole presentation, my main focus is not only video services on the internet, but I'm thinking on the professional TV services and using internet or non-internet. So conceptually, I'm talking more of that and less of the user-generated content. It's more about this service, the television ecosystem, where it's pay TV, free-to-air TV, or public service broadcasting with license fee or subsidies. What will be in the future? I'm not sure. It will be a seamless combination of everything, linear, non-linear, schedule, not the schedule, multiple platform, multi-channels, multi-devices. It's all seamless combined. But, sorry, just getting too used to. One step back. Sorry for that. But the important thing is that we are seeing a big change, that some of the measuring tools that we have today are out of date, and then we will see that in some cases it's difficult to monetize the changes because the measuring tools of the new consumption is not available yet. And all of us, the players, advertisers, the Nielsen or the audience measuring companies, we are all doing trial and error to cope with the changes and developing the tools that will allow us to fully understand and adapt to that. As I said, just the most important thing for today of the European broadcasting system compared to others like the US, we have lots of learnings about non-linear television in the US, but the important thing here is a strong presence of public service broadcasting in the European ecosystem, first, and second, the importance that public service broadcasting has for the European or country-level production in those countries. This is at the core of the ecosystem and will be one of the worries of policymakers and regulators going forward, as this is at the core of the traditional licensing of TV or linear TV today, but may have some challenges going forward. Other than that, obviously, we are talking about level of competition, the role of PSB, the scale and funding of PSB, also in regional and local. This is all part of the debate. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. So just one thing. I think the focus of my slide, of my presentation today, is on the changes between linear and non-linear TV. But we need to bear in mind there's several changes that are taking place simultaneously, and they are not minor. And they also affect the way we are competing today, the way we are addressing our audiences, and the way we are investing in the content that we want to have. First, the structural changes. First one has been the transition to DTT, that on those countries where terrestrial is most important platform to households, it has completely transformed the audiences, the fragmentation of the audiences, the way the channels have structured themselves, or the broadcasters through multi-channels. This has come before, a few years earlier, in countries like the Netherlands or Germany, with a more satellite cable, where the fragmentation, the multi-channel approach has been taking place before. Also very important cyclical changes. And by cyclical I mean in a higher levels, the financial crisis and what it means for the spending, advertising spending, consumer spending, even the state funding for public service broadcasting. This is all at the core of the changes today. But if that was not sufficient, then we have all the public policy and regulatory changes as well. And we have seen important transformation here, like the advertising bans on television, full advertising ban on Spanish PSB, national PSB, and also primetime banning of advertising on French television as well, the public service, national public service broadcaster. There's a greater focus on competition law, assessing. All of that needs to be taken into account, not only the linear, non-linear, not only the consumption. And I know that makes a much more difficult job for you on a day-to-day basis. Let's move forward and see some of the changes. First on the linear TV, the non-linear TV, and then we'll combine the two to give a bit of perspective. Linear TV, some talks about linear TV is dead. But we can see through the different changes, and I would like to focus on one of them, is consumption. Consumption for linear TV is still growing. How long for? I don't know. But so far, linear TV consumption on a daily basis, minutes per day, is still growing. At the same time, broadcasters have adapted on the scheduling. Rather than looking at one channel, the programming in that hour have a family of channels. That's the first change that we have had over the last 10 years, with DTT in particular, before in other countries. The documentary channel, the kids channel, the other channels, so everyone by turn. Devices. If only focus on linear TV, two major changes I would like to highlight, which are having a major impact. First, the high definition, and also in parallel, time shifting through linear TV. By that I mean through the traditional decoder and the recording DVR set-top box that we have in the homes, in most homes. Mainly on those countries where the pay TV operators are, but also in some of the DTT markets where you have a more kind of top game DTT decoder, where you can also record on a media player. This is having already a significant impact, and in terms of audiences, probably a greater impact than the non-linear TV impact. And this already affects the way you program your linear TV channel and the way advertising goes into the channel because of the move of the consumption patterns. Transmission services, obviously, more and more platforms are coming, and the transition to DTT, which I will cover. And the business models are also evolving in different markets, with mainly the progression of the pay TV, thank you, versus the free-to-air markets across Europe. Okay? So I will talk about, thank you. I will talk about some of that changes with some numbers and some graphs in the next slide before I go into the non-linear TV. So basically, as we have seen across Europe, DTT has been, or DSO, the digital switchover, has been completed on most Western Europe, or all Western Europe and most of Europe. Now the focus is in Eastern Europe, where probably 2015 will take place in most countries. That, as I said, has had a phenomenal change in those countries where terrestrial is more important, say 40–50% of households receiving, like in the UK, in France, in Italy, in Spain, and so on. I don't know if it goes to the next slide or I need some support to move forward. What I was saying, or what I have for the next slide, if someone can help me, perhaps it will be easier. No, oops, sorry, it has moved now. Probably I have to point somewhere there, perhaps. So basically, this is just two types of linear TV changes that we see. We can say linear or associated to the main way to deliver television, penetration on the larger 5 countries of high-definition TV receivers and DVR functionality for time shifting. All in all, 20 to 40% of households are already able to receive those different types of consumption. So an important trend when you look at your cost of producing in high definition or the effect of your audiences when you look at the time shift of your key programs. I'm really sorry, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. What I want to show is just very quickly, I'm conscious of time so that I can spend some time on the non-linear TV, the importance of the DSO, the move to DTT in most countries, less so on countries where there was a low penetration of DTT. But you can see that on main public service broadcaster, national in this case, this is data to 2011, so it has evolved a bit since then, but there were almost 10 percentage points of audience drop on most countries, partly compensated, but not in full, by the thematic family of channels of the same broadcasters. A classical phenomenon. Everyone has tried to protect with a multi-channel approach, but this is just one part of just the changes that we have seen so far. And I understand the DTT has a lesser impact than the changes that we will see with non-linear TV. But that over the last 10 years, we have seen this 10% audience drop on the main channels. So that puts perspective on where it can come through the non-linear TV perspective. Similar story for the commercial TV channels, perhaps less of a focus today, but they have suffered a similar fragmentation of audiences to use, and they have also protected their audiences with their own family of TV channels. But if we move forward, as I was saying, the important thing is to notice and to note on the last 10 years, 8 years or so, the incremental year-on-year growth of linear TV consumption. This is critical assumption. And that critical assumption is one of the key ones you will have to assess and have your own views on how the future will look like for your country and for your own TV channel. These are the core of your decisions. If anything here, I can only highlight perhaps the UK was flat last year, and as we will see, the UK is one of the countries which is ahead in terms of non-linear TV developments. I'm not sure, and we will have to monitor where this is a kind of a tipping point and signaling the way forward. Is that or is that just a one-off, and then the linear TV consumption growth will continue in the future? That's something we all need to pay attention. Total TV revenues have also grown, but not necessarily in line with the homogeneous growth of consumptions. As I said, structural cyclical changes, in particular financial advertising, means that in some countries like Italy or Spain, they have suffered more than others in terms of advertising and total revenues. And the same thing for commercial broadcasters, not only for the total market, and for public broadcasters as here, so noticeable drops in the different broadcasters. Somehow the PSB more protected due to the license fee, to the extent license fee is not undercut by the governments, as we have seen that is the current debate. Overall, in the whole ecosystem, the one that is more resilient has been pay TV. Pay TV is continuing to grow in this ecosystem, and they are growing, though the growth has slightly reviewed downwards. They were growing at 2 digits in terms of pay TV subscribers, or in terms of revenues. They are now have gone down to below 5%, or in the 6 to 3% growth rate for pay TV, as well as consumption is also under spot for consumers. So that is just a perception of the scale of change. okay, in funding, in audience, in consumption. So lots of pressure on you day to day. This is more than 90% or 95% of your business. And therefore, this is what you're suffering today on your own P&Ls. At the same time, we are seeing, and everyone is excited about, the growth of non-linear TV. What is it happening? Then you are investing, everyone is investing on new schedules, new programming, catch-up, pre, post film rollouts of the different programs, devices multiplications, internet, smart TV, tablets, one way or another, connected to the broadband connection, use at home, use at the office, use on the move, on a streaming, live or not. The broadband transmission as the key enabler to transform the non-linear TV evolution into a mass market evolution. So as we advance and as we get more than 80% penetration of broadband and highest speed broadband in each country, that connected TV will only be reinvigorated and reinforced. That will accelerate the transformation that we are seeing today, I think. So we're seeing a huge growth in consumption, 2 digits, 3 digits, that makes very small the growth consumption of 2% or 1% on the linear TV. Still growing, but that is growing, albeit from a very low base, at 2 digits or 3 digits over the last few years. So they will rapidly become mainstream. How rapidly? That's the key question, and that we need to look at. There will be some issues we need to highlight, is the type of services, the content, the evolution, the multiple standards. We're talking, and at the beginning we're saying linear TV, non-linear TV. Will the future talk about a convergent TV? Perhaps. But also we need to be aware of the fragmentation of TV, the multiplication of standards, of devices, of formats. That only makes your life more complex. That only adds to your cost base. And that only puts pressure onto the margins, because there's not much more on the revenue side at the moment for all of that. So unless there's some changes there, we are only talking about short-term, a much more difficult job for every one of you. And we'll see how the business models are evolving between pay TV and non-pay TV. So just a bit of flavor on all of those changes that I'm talking about here. First of all, is broadband penetration is rapidly evolving at a constant pace over the last few years. Just 2 maps, again, there may be different sources. You may argue about accuracy, one country, another country, not the purpose of the call or the slide today. The purpose is much darker on the right than on the left, just 6 years or 7 years. We are rapidly evolving to a market where there will be more than 80% broadband penetration. The objectives of the Commission is 100% broadband penetration by 2020. That's the aim goal. And policymakers, telecom operators, fixed or mobile, are playing against this goal, 2020. So in 7 years, we should have a pretty much mass market on broadband. The second important thing of this broadband is the speed of this broadband. Again, it's darker on the right-hand side. Here I'm not sure about the accuracy of the data, because that's the average speed in a country, but it may be not 100% clear, because in some countries the penetration is lower. So you have a faster speed in the eastern countries, but maybe with a small percentage of households. I think the important is the combination of the previous slide and this slide. And we can see in Western Europe, UK, the Nordic countries, where you will have the combination of both mass market, 80% or plus penetration of broadband, and a higher speed. That's the most important thing. And it will become, by 2020 for sure, as an enabler for the mass market development of internet, connected TV, non-linear TV. Then what can we do with this broadband? What are the services that we'll be able to receive in one household when you have 20 megabits per second channel, 30 megabits per second pipe, 100 megabits per second? Here we will try to show there's 2 axes. The horizontal is the increase of megabits per second you need when you increase your standard of the quality of the video stream, the service that you offer. On the vertical axis is the number of streams that are simultaneously consumed in a household. Typically in Europe, we have 2 to 3 people in a household. So basically in the middle, what I have highlighted, if you have 2 or 3 people that are consuming one live program at the same time in different parts of the house, and they are looking at the standard definition or high definition streaming, they may be okay with 25 megabits per second. Obviously, if you have 100 megabits per second, you may want to move to 3D, HDTV, you may have many more streams simultaneously. But with 25 megabits per second, or with only 6 megabits per second, a good ADSL connection, you may have 3 standard definition streams simultaneously into the house. Mom, dad, one of the kids. So you can already offer quite a significant non-linear TV experience in the house. That's very important. So when we saw the previous maps, in almost no time, we will have a mass market in the next 5 years for non-linear TV across Europe. And that's very important to you, because you see that that is coming. And then if the experience moves to high HD TV, then we may need the cable operators 100 megabit per second connections. But if not, for the normal experience and consumers trade off the quality in terms of megabits when they look at in a tablet or on a PC compared to the home cinema or the large TV screens. So that is coming. 2020 for sure will have a mass market, in my view, for non-linear TV across Europe in an homogeneous way. Much more homogeneous than the linear TV today, where we have diverse situations in Europe between cable markets, DTT markets, satellite markets, and so on. So just to take that into account, again, what's coming? So what are the flavors of that? We have discussed the penetration of DVBR or claimed DVBR according to the Ofcom data in different countries. Here I wanted to compare to the ways we could receive non-linear TV in different countries through the internet connection, through a connected TV or smart TV, the different flavors that we're having of access to non-linear TV. Okay, and we are at the 10, maximum 20% of households already having the new devices in the larger 5 countries in Europe, as a sample for the wider Europe, and the Nordic more closest to the UK benchmarks, or the South more closest to the Spain and Italy benchmark, and Benelux closer to Germany and France. But nevertheless, so still in a relatively low percentage, but growing fast. If we move to understanding the evolution of the non-linear TV consumption and adoption by consumers. So the technology is put there, the broadband connections are getting there, the broadcasters and new players are offering more and more on-demand services, but then what are consumers doing? On the left-hand side, we can see the increase on unique online TV viewers over the last 3 years. So you can see a huge growth on users, in particular in Germany, France, UK, talking about more than 40 million in Germany and close UK and France, with growth rates 17%, 21%, 7%, much greater than, obviously, linear consumption, which is a more mature market, obviously. On the right-hand side, you have the linear, the videos consumption per viewer, which is the combination of them will be an indicator of the minutes they spend online to view all of that. You move forward. Then that goes into the online TV consumed per head, that also, as they experience that, 40% growth, 44% is common on all the markets. And this is what we need to bear in mind when we think about the future scenarios going forward. Growth rates of 30, 40, 60% compounded growth rates. And if we move into the revenues side, next one. So we can see also huge growth rates, now even more accelerated over the last year than the consumption. It's been very difficult to monetize those audiences. We may be at the changing game there, where we start to see some people are starting to monetize those audiences. But we are still far away, but the growths are very, very important. Just one final slide on non-linear TV, which is about the business models. You can see the light blue is about free-to-air, the dark blue is about paid TV models. So I don't know, the overall linear TV market in Europe is about 70% free-to-air PSB, or advertising-based PSB, 30% paid TV in terms of revenues. So here is still dynamic, but perhaps we will end up in a similar context into the 70-30% mix. But we are still experiencing different formats. So I want to move forward and put the things into perspective. I think it's very important. So everyone excited about the huge growth 100% compared to the 2%, obviously everyone gets excited. But what's the reality if we put the two things together? Well, we are seeing at the moment, I think I will skip, and I suppose the organization will make those slides available to everyone that wants them. Happy to share that afterwards so that you can read at your leisure. But basically, it's the complementarity at the moment of the two things. Non-linear TV is complementing, reinforcing linear TV, is not, at the moment, changing the game completely. And consumers are adopting simultaneously two things, the new advance on non-linear TV and the new advance on linear TV, HD, time-shifted, traditional time-shifted. If you move to the next slide, I think the graph on the left intends to show or aims at showing the parallel adoption of the two kind of drivers of non-linear and linear TV. On the horizontal axis is the adoption in different countries of HD TV as the key evolution on linear TV, and the different countries are adopting it, but in parallel, they are adopting also TV over the internet. So the two lines evolve in parallel, and consumers are adopting both and consuming more TV one way or another. I didn't have data for Europe, but I just want to show that graph from the US in terms of understanding these non-linear, big categories, non-linear TV, what it really means, what is behind this data in time shift or other. In the US, what it means is just the top two blocks, the green and the light blue, are the ones related to consumption, non-linear TV consumption on the internet, on the mobile. Perhaps 1/3. The other is 2/3, which is more non-linear TV through the traditional set-top box, DVR and other. So again, just to put in, when we look at non-linear TV consumption, they may be, depending on the data, they may be referring to both traditional time-shifted, more under the control of the broadcasters, and non-traditional time-shift or non-linear consumption related to more the internet and more kind of disruptive non-linear consumption. So just a few slides on what it means in terms of putting the things in context on consumption and on revenues, we will see later on non-linear TV consumption versus linear TV consumption. We have seen the relative growth of each of them. When we put them in comparison for the larger 5 countries in Europe on the left-hand side, today data suggests that we are between 10% or 16% of the total viewing is non-linear. Okay, so that, yes, is changing, but we are at this rate. I think I heard that Finland, someone told me, was also in the top end, like Germany, on the 16 or 15%. Maybe someone can comment on those data if they have other. But I think the important thing is on the right-hand side, in my view, which is when we look at the scenarios going forward, is how rapidly this is changing. And this is changing at 2 or 3 or 5% per year. I think this is an important data because if we are thinking about in 5 years down the line, in 10 years down the line, if it changes at 3%, the non-linear viewing versus viewing, it may mean that in 10 years, 30% of the total viewing may be non-linear compared to the linear. So that's the pace at which we're moving and the scale we're talking. So it will be a significant change in 5-10 years, depending on those growth rates. Okay? And that we need to monitor, inform better, and see how it evolves. These are averages. I think another interesting point is averages are good for financial people. Okay? It's easier to do a business plan with averages. Reality is also about key programs, and the competition between broadcasters in prime time is about this program versus the other program, and how that program does, and how you sell this prime time. Okay? Not necessarily prime time, but I just highlighted 2 cases, one from the UK, one from Spain, about beyond the averages, some top programs that have attracted phenomenal, I would say, non-linear followership. Africa in the UK, I think it's the BBC, with 25% of viewing non-linear, which is the light blue versus the dark blue. On the right-hand side, Pulseras Vermelles of the Catalan TV, our regional PSB, so more relevant to you, an example that you can be innovative and be at the top of the age. 35% of the audience was non-linear, with preview and post-view non-linear. I think another important point, which is not on the slide, is, according to what I have seen, most of the non-linear consumption was through the YouTube channel, not the main TV channel. So here I'm not talking about who is providing this experience. The broadcaster is putting that. It may go through different channels, and I'm just aggregating it here as a phenomenon. There's another level of analysis that needs to be done about who is providing the experience, and depending on who is providing the experience to consumers, how that relates back to the value chain, to the broadcaster or the platform. Yep. So, as I was saying, the other important thing is about the value, and I think it's very important in terms of value to highlight not only the evolution of consumptions. I have said 10 or 16% per country is non-linear TV versus total linear TV. If you look at the right-hand side graphic here on this chart, in the best case in the UK, in terms of monetizing that audience, we're talking about 1% non-linear TV revenues compared to the whole ecosystem. It's a significant change. It's almost 10 times lower than the minutes. That just shows how difficult it is to monetize those audiences today. We have seen there's a huge growth on revenues, 100%, 40%. So it's changing, but we're starting from that point, and that's why, at the moment, decisions are very tactical, short-term based, managing cost, because all of that, as I said at the beginning, is managing cost, new formats, new means of distribution, new reformatting. But in terms of revenue, it's very difficult to get the payback, okay? And that we need to know. I have no data for Europe. I have followed in the US and some two key things. I think one is cord cutting and the other is revenue share between traditional broadcasters and pay TV operators and new players like Netflix. I've been told, and with all the caution, I've been told that it's 50-50 share between the new players and the traditional players in the new ecosystem. So it's like in this 1.6%, the 200 millions in the UK almost, it could be 100 millions for the new entrants and 100 millions for the established players. It's a big change. So if this percentage was to stay going forward, that means a significant threat and challenge to the traditional ecosystem. If traditional players like you, broadcasters, playing the main stage in Europe, react, obviously, which I'm sure they will, and you will, then these percentages will reverse. The other thing is, at the moment, the other element more related to pay TV, less to you, but nevertheless, there are some audiences behind that. We have not seen evidence of lots of cord cutting, what they call cord cutting in the US or else, which is about pay TV subscriptions fading away in terms of having pay TV over the top TV. So the numbers I have heard is 3%, no more than 3%. Again, in relative terms, despite the hype, it appears that it's not yet, it's at the moment more complementary than a substitution and a complete game changer of the market. Getting towards the end, I hope that you're still with me and you're finding it interesting. What I just put 2 slides here, or 3 slides, just to say, okay, we are looking at the past. We're looking at all the history. It gives an indicator of the pace of change so far, linear, non-linear, some percentages. Can we think about the future? I have not come here to give you lessons in terms of what's the future going to be.
Late.
But just to give you, I'm finished, to give you a pointer on how could that market look in the future, according to your perspective, or potentially the perspective of a Netflix or a new over-the-top TV player. These are two ways to look at the world in the future. The left graph is about, as I said, linear TV is growing, is the blue line. Yes, changes are coming, but I'm not too concerned. My traditional business is still there. And there's exponential growth in red from the non-linear TV. But at some point, and we have seen one data point suggesting linear TV may be flattening in the UK. Is that the first sign, or is not the first sign? Could linear TV start dropping and reducing? That could be the other line, the other view of the world, which obviously Netflix and Google and YouTube will play in their favor. They will see the future view of the world like that one. Linear TV going down and much faster growth of non-linear TV. Why is that important? Because at the end, all of us in our daily jobs, yourself, myself as an advisor to many of you or the industry, we'll have to take assumptions on, let's look at 2020, how my business will look like, how the market could evolve, and in a scenario A, B, or C, what I will do. And just for the sake of if you want, playing a bit, just to illustrate, there's no more science behind these numbers, so don't take them as a science. It's just, what if we continue to have a non-linear TV growth, evolutionary, scenario 1, evolutionary, 40% growth of non-linear TV. No, sorry, that's the reverse. So The first one is non-linear TV, sorry. Growth of non-linear TV at 40%, 50% or 60% across the scenarios, evolutionary at the expense of free-to-air or at the expense of pay TV. So huge growth on non-linear TV across the board, but a bit moderated in this 40 to 60% growth, as we have seen. Linear TV staying at this 2% or 0% or starting to flatten, and also pay TV a bit more resilient than the rest. You can change these numbers. It's just to illustrate what the market could look like in the future. If we were to take just that as a pointer of what the future could hold, you can have this view here on the graph. On the graph on the left is saying how that will change in terms of linear TV, which is the dark blue, and non-linear TV. Depending on the combination of the growth, you could have non-linear TV be a very, very significant market by 2020 in only 7 years at this pace of growth and just a slight reduction of the linear TV, okay? Which are growth rates lower than the existing ones, but we obviously expect that there will be some maturity on those numbers. Although there could be also acceleration because of the broadband factors that we have said. So, but that's just an initial view on what could happen. And on the right-hand side is more related to the traditional free-to-air pay TV over-the-top business. So obviously Netflix will take the view on the right-hand side, the scenario 3, more aggressive growth to the detriment of established players. Maybe 1/3 of the market becoming non-linear TV, 2/3 staying on the current. And if you take on the most aggressive scenario, this 30%, and you were to take the numbers from the US, 50-50, there's a significant opportunity there for the new players, and obviously a lot to play for you to protect your market. So just as a view. I will just finish with one slide at the end. Yeah, if you move forward, please. This is about the political debate that is taking place in Europe. One more, and next one. And just to highlight that in all this following the market, we are all actors and following that. Regulators and policymakers are also looking into that and monitoring the changes and deciding whether or not it's time to act in the ecosystem to protect the European ecosystem that we said at the beginning, where public service broadcasters have played a major role, regional they are in as well, in Europe. So just those are the themes that have come across in the positions papers in Germany, in France, in the white paper in the UK, in the European grid paper that was announced a couple of weeks ago. Those are the big themes: advertising, access and prominence, rights, spectrum, reference markets, net neutrality, the importance of production, European production, protection of minors. If I want to highlight 3 things, according to the debate in Germany, in France and the UK, the focal point of policymakers at the moment, other than protection of minors, which is obviously for all of them, is advertising in Germany, asymmetry of advertising of linear and non-linear TV. How will that change the game, and where's a need or not to change things? Access and prominence in the UK, the discussions between the BBC, ITV and the rest in terms of who pays what or don't pay for access to the pay TV operators, cable, satellite and the rest. And perhaps the other debate on the EU wars with obviously a focus in France, which has always been at the forefront of that, is what it means for production of European and local content. So those are all things that are looking at how it is defined today on linear TV and how this regulation and policy decision have to move to the non-linear environment. So I hope that you have found that interesting. Just the last slide. I think in my summary, next one, lots of complexity and uncertainty. I think 2 views of the world, short-term, tactically, long-term, big changes, but we need to understand for each of you, in each country, and for the regional broadcasting operator that you are, what does this mean to you? You will have different scale and pace in each of you. But there are different perspectives, and there will be different perspectives of the different players in the world, obviously. But you need to defend your own position and act as a key player. The forecasts that I could do or you could do are just a view of the world, but you are there as key player to take your decisions and shape that world and shape that changing. It depends on you and the consumers, obviously. But that's what I wanted to share with you today. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask.
We have 5 minutes for questions. Please, President of Circom.
Thank you. Probably there are no questions because your presentation was very important, interesting, with many figures, and I think it was very interesting. But for me, there is one thing was missing. There was no word in all your presentations about production, because that's also a very big difference. We, public services, national, regional members of CIRCOM, we do produce ourselves an important part of what we do broadcast. And it makes also a big difference, because a lot of all the newcomers, not all, but the majority of them, they don't produce anything. You mentioned at a certain times Google, and they don't produce a minute. They just pick up what the other one produces. So do you see also a difference in the future between those who are producing the majority of what they do broadcast and the other ones? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, perhaps it was not explicit, but it was implicit. Okay. So when we talk about the debate in France about EU works, obviously it's about production of local and European content. That's for sure. And that's what I said. Public service broadcasting is at the core of European production. So it's implicit in the presentation, even it was not the focus. I think in terms of production, there will be different views on what you just said. I think obviously your production is very important, and you are producing more and more. The examples I have put here in the BBC or the Catalan TV have impact on what they produce and how they produce, how they interact with the audiences for the TV series that they produce. And they work on linear TV, but they build on the social TV elements on the non-linear TV. So that's core to the traditional programming production that you have. In addition to that, there's a specific investment in producing for non-linear TV channels directly. So you may say that they are not producing, but at the end someone is producing. So if it is not YouTube or Netflix, there may be a production company behind that will be, and is increasingly investing for specifically the internet channels. I have read some and there will be also public service broadcasters doing that. I think there were another 15 channels from YouTube in France recently. There's investment on YouTube, but I'm not sure who, it was France Television and someone else, some other French producers and companies behind that. It may not be YouTube, but it will be in partnership with YouTube. YouTube in that case will be more the equivalent of Numéricable or Virgin Media or the pay TV operator or the aggregator, if you want to ask, rather than the production. So the production could be by this player or could be further down in the value chain. And it may be specific for that TV channel or just an additional window for the traditional production. But I don't have here, you're right, and more insight into this element of the discussion, but it's implicit in the concerns of regulators and policymakers in Europe, how that will change.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
If I had to think about making a change, no, we're talking about stepping forward, and which are the most important or key factors that I, as broadcaster or thinking element of a thinking group would have to take into consideration in order to avoid mistakes?
Yeah, I suppose that it's a difficult one. You can try to avoid mistakes, but the fact of life is that we all make mistakes. So it's a question of making mistakes and learning from them and move as fast as you can. So I think we will all make mistakes. I think what we have seen now is trial and error in most of these developments, is embracing what the consumers are keen to have and experience in terms of video, and move with them as best as you can. The example I will put, and probably is the example I said in non-linear, experiencing non-linear TV with this TV series that I have said in free-to-air television. So that's one of the things that you have to do to experience with your audiences how they embrace in each of your countries and regions the non-linear TV viewing and engage with them and deliver this new format that they are asking in the most efficient way and see if you can monetize, or at least monetize if you have advertising revenues, or at least increase your reach and the rest to make sure that your public investment is perceived and justified by the reach and the usage that your services have. Another example I have perhaps is the way cable operators are embracing that as well. They are also adapting to the changes. What they have done is try to offer the consumers through the new EPGs, and I don't want to make publicity in anyone, but just the first one that comes to my mind is Liberty with UPC and Virgin Media and the rest. They are adapting the EPG to embrace on their EPG the non-linear element, having in a controlled way offer the consumers, their subscribers, the access to the linear TV that they want, but also on both a kind of internet-driven, in a controlled way, in a way, and also in terms of applications, apps, like in the mobile apps, but on the TV apps as a monitor, giving access to the on-demand services of the TV channels that are most demanded by the subscribers. And therefore, they're trying to anticipate, say, I don't want my consumers, my subscribers to go away and go over the top into the internet, but I want to offer them what they want, and in an easy way, with the multiplication of services, linear, non-linear, there's so many options. They want to facilitate the access to those options to consumers. So they're working on the EPG to give that consumer what they want in the best, easy way, and keep them with them rather than moving away. But there's not the first iteration. They didn't get it right the first time. Obviously, they have a few iterations before it seems they have something that it is working much well, or much better.
Thank you. Any other question? We're fine. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Go on with the day.